the Friends Young Enterprise Foundation, and every bit as important as it is to invest in the cultural centre here in San Francisco, it is really important, I think, to invest in young people back home who maybe aren't getting the opportunities that many of us in the room have. Very often you find societies that, for whatever reason, sometimes it can be an inspirational teacher, a mentor, parenting and so on, that children can thrive. But unfortunately, the sad truth in the North is that from too many kids, too many young people, they're not able to reach their potential. Some of that is because of no role models. You have certain parts of society where there's intergenerational unemployment, and too many kids are being let down a little bit by the system. We're really hoping to change that, and the foundation that Young Enterprise helps is a 501(c)(3) foundation in the States. And what we're doing is we are investing funds to support young people in schools and hopefully to transform their lives. Essentially, today, I'm giving you an opportunity to lower the ladder down and see if we can help others who are less fortunate and see if we can pull them up into a much more entrepreneurial world. And the success we have is phenomenal. When you see young people, with some interventions, maybe not totally engaged in schools, and then all of a sudden get involved in entrepreneurship and feeling for the first time in their lives there's something I'm actually good at and there's something I can actually do. So I really encourage you to support us. You'll see a QR code on the screens there, and you'll also see some literature on your tables. There's a few quotes from the kids themselves, and I would encourage you, if you could, to support the foundation and get behind us. I have a few fellow board members here who are going to be on the panel shortly, Guy Gilchrist and Stephen Donnelly, one from Google, one from Oracle. And they're both lads from Belfast, and they're absolutely behind the cause. And I'm sure there's many others in the state who would actually follow on that. So we're also hosting a short drinks reception later, and you're all invited to it. It's going to be in Foley's Irish House, and I would love you to come along at the end of the session today and continue the discussion and continue the networking. So we'll move on now to the next panel, which is about coming of age from AI pilots to enterprise platforms. And I'm going to invite to the stage Chair Matt McGuire, who's VP of Unosquare, Michael McMahon, who's from Options Technology, Alan Carson, who's a co-founder of the amazing company Cloudsmith you heard from earlier, Stephen Donnelly, one of my board colleagues from Google, and Aoife Mhuirí, who's a founder of Salaso Health from the beautiful county of Kerry. So welcome to the stage. All right, young fella.
All right. So good afternoon. My name is Matt McGuire. I'm the VP of Data and AI at Unosquare. We are a global digital engineering services firm. So we build software for U.S. companies, leveraging talent from Canada, the U.S., and a large presence in Mexico, Latin America, so Colombia, Bolivia, Paraguay. Of course, last but not least, our office in Belfast. So as somebody who considers himself very much Irish adjacent, as Stuart said earlier, and as a McGuire and a Ginger, thank you for having me, Marcin, on the panel. So the topic of the panel today is really about taking AI pilots or MVPs or POCs into enterprise platforms. And I think we've got a really up here actually of diverse backgrounds, very in-depth experience, and I'm looking forward to getting into their insights into this topic. To start off with, I'd love to have just each one of you introduce yourselves just for 30 seconds. Tell us a bit about yourself, your background, anything else you'd like to share early on. So we'll start with you.
So I'm Michael McMahon. I'm a software developer and ML ops engineer for Options IT. A lot of what I do is heads up the development and lead the team behind developing our private mine product. So it's kind of a lot of different things, but the main offering of it is a software layer and an infrastructure layer of fully privatized deployments for any financial institution or financial services company. So Options as a business service the financial services, and we've been doing that for 30 years as an infrastructure provider, a market data provider. We do loads of stuff. But with this new push into AI, we've seen a a huge change in the way we do things, and I think it's going to be a great conversation today because it has so much of an impact on our day-to-day now as every company.
Absolutely. Alan, yeah.
Hi, I'm Alan Carson. I'm a co-founder at Cloudsmith, and Cloudsmith essentially is a critical infrastructure layer that sits sort of above the cloud and below actual software creation. So very horizontal across the ecosystem. You pretty much all have used Cloudsmith indirectly in your day-to-day lives. We have customers like Aer Lingus, American Airlines, Shopify, so if you haven't bought anything online. We sit in that technology stack. So we're supporting AI, supporting security, and yeah, that's me.
Hello everybody, Aoife and Mhuirí. From Inzruan in Connemara, but based in Kerry and New York as well with the business. I'm a physiotherapist and exercise physiologist, passionate about the benefits of exercise, physiotherapy, prescribed exercise and so on to help prevent, manage injury and help people age well and keep yourself healthy, fit and well in what you do every day. Over 20 years in clinical practice, I was always bothered by people would come in for treatment, and if they had known what to do themselves, they could have avoided getting an injury or could have sort of solved it much, much earlier in the process. So I started Salaso Health. We're a digital health company, and basically we're a digital solution to do a little bit like what Conor was talking about earlier, teaching sports people at the early stage of their careers what they know as a sports person and as a high-level athlete. We're very much about teaching, anybody out there what a physiotherapist knows, that what can you do to help yourself keep yourself healthy, fit and well. So we work in the healthcare space, we work with hospitals, healthcare organisations, but we also work with employer organisations to help keep their people healthy, effectively moving the care upstream. Our unique the unique piece we do is very much around role-based prevention. So most injuries happen because you're doing a repetitive movement or sustained posture over a period of time, and a lot of that can be to do with your work. So we teach you how to prevent that becoming an injury by using exercise, stretches and so on. So that's what we do at Salaso, and delighted to be here. We're using AI to support the work that we do. It's been a fascinating discussion. I learned an awful lot this morning. So thank you to Martin and Conor and everyone for inviting me to be here. Thank you.
Stephen Donnelly, based in the Bay Area, came across from Accenture in London about 10 years ago. Spent a few years bringing AI services to the trust and safety industry, most notably content moderation. Then spent a few years at Deloitte, and for the last couple of years I've been working with Google, helping them to figure out how to shift from human raters to AI raters to enhance the search platform's experience.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So just to frame the conversation a little bit and briefly, because we've got 17 minutes left to go, I think many companies have already got AI pilots somewhere in their ecosystem. They've got a proof of concept, they have an MVP, and I think a lot of those don't make it to production for one reason or the other. The ones that do make it to production may look and should look dramatically different, right? I think those of us that build software every day know that, sort of beneath the waterline of what you see in a POC or a pilot, there's a whole world of architecture and scalability and security and governance. There's a difference between, hey, this looks amazing, works in a notebook, and this is actually running inside of our platform. Our business depends on this. This is part of our core functionality now. And I think between all of your backgrounds, through yourselves, your own companies, through your clients, you guys have all done this. So I think I would just start with a question for each one of you, kind of again down the line. For a pilot that you've seen or a POC that you've seen, make it to production or not make it to production, what's one thing that you think made that successful? It could be organizational, it could be technological, it could be operating model, or conversely, if the one you have in mind didn't make it, why didn't it make it? So Michael, we'll start with you.
So I would definitely say that the most important step from my perspective at least is the review process. So we have this technology now that greatly speeds up everything we do on a day-to-day, whether that's writing code, raising it for review, or just anything in the whole DevOps pipeline as well. And it's fascinating technology, but it is also very, very fast moving. And I'm not just talking about the changes of which model comes out and stuff, but more so the actual speed that AI outputs at. It's very easy to get lost in the chaos of it all and say, well, it's all done now, without actually looking at everything that has been written. And before you put that into a business case that end users are using, there needs to be a very large review process, which obviously existed beforehand in software development, but has become so much more critical now because there's so much less contextual awareness in the development happening. So obviously we've all heard the saying garbage in, garbage out for AI, where if you give it information, it will take that and really run with it, but it doesn't know any of the other information that you just take as a given. So I've definitely noticed that. I think Alan will probably have a really unique perspective on this as well, with the work that Cloudsmith do for the supply chain, and how we've now seen a lot of very acclaimed packages and very previously reliable pieces of software become less and less reliable over time. I mean, a great example is Axios or GitHub, where these are fundamental systems that power so much of the internet, but now the more active code and larger amounts of code that are being implemented into the code bases of these projects is creating gaps in the system that aren't adhering to uptime regulations and stuff. And yeah, definitely the review process.
Yeah, that's a very good answer, by the way. What has ended up happening is open source drives 90% of deployed code. And essentially the software development life cycle is you're building the 10%, you're bringing in 90% of other pre-baked written code. That can come with a level of vulnerabilities that you either don't know about or do know about, and that's the entire security industry is trying to make those observable and actionable so that you can go in and clean that up. Now what you've got with AI is you're getting pull requests that are like 150% bigger, which means the code reviews are harder to do. And actually, so software essentially is assembled, rather than written today. So you're trying to pull all these pieces together, and ultimately that ends up as your deployment. There's an enormous amount of, and we've heard about a few of these things today, obviously not in maybe the software context, but like provenance that goes into where those packages came from, who has interacted with them, and you have to give all of that information over to each of those organizations. So it has just gotten harder. And the Circle CI did a really interesting report, and they're a CI/CD tool, which basically assembles it. Builds are failing more, and the time to remediation of those builds has also gone up. So it has basically shifted what a developer now works on. The code gets written faster, but ultimately, in order to get that code into production, there's now more work to be done.
So the bottleneck has shifted downstream.
It has, yeah.
Again, I'm not technical here, so I'm going to defer to the guys on the software side of it. But I suppose we have definitely implemented AI in various processes across the business. And to answer the question you asked, if I look at it sort of from a strategic perspective, looking at managing the implementation of new processes, I suppose, leveraging AI and so on, I would say the one key thing that we spend a lot of time on to ensure that the implementation is successful and it moves from pilot to scale is actually thinking about what could potentially go wrong. So similar to what the panel talked about earlier, making sure the guardrails are in place, really thinking above, beyond, around and below, what we're doing here, what's it going to mean. You'll always think of as I said earlier, the optimistic and the positive impact, but what is the potential negative, and then what guardrails do we put in place to avoid those? So that really helps in our business.
From my perspective, it's helpful to think about a really compelling use case, or how does it relate to the end user? You know, what's the stickiness? And more importantly, how do you make money? You know, it moves from generation of revenue, you know, cost per outcome, instead of, is it, you know, technically possible to do it? And if I think of where AI is at the minute, I think we're at the shift from agentic or assistive AI, which might help me 10, 20% on an individual level, to where this system becomes a driver of output. And I think for that to happen, some of the challenges then relate to areas like data or ownership or trust or governance and control, and even culture. When you're shifting from pilot to enterprise, you need a whole new set of roles and responsibilities, and AI is going to bring some unique perspectives to that we don't see with traditional software development, which is maybe more binary, does it work or not, you know? So it's a fascinating part, but stickiness and the revenue generation will be a critical component.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. And actually, just to piggyback on that a little bit, so your experience at Google, Deloitte, Accenture, if you walked into a new company today and thought, this shop is going to be amazingly successful at shipping AI, what has to be true even before the technology? So it's hinting at the operating model you were just talking about, but what's true at a company that's going to be successful before they're writing the code?
So what differentiates that perspective with at Deloitte and Accenture PwC is how they've traditionally sold AI is as advisory work or as a service or a capability. Now what we're seeing is these companies coming in saying AI can be your operating model. The human becomes the evaluation layer or the exception handling layer, but it's really thinking about AI as an operating model that differentiates that perspective. And I also think that if I look at the likes of a Google, they will struggle to get to that end user without that orchestration and execution layer that some of those companies can help them to provide.
Yeah, that makes sense. And coming back, Aoife, to you I want to circle back on the commentary around operating in a regulated space, right? So you work in healthcare, there's real clinically validated outcomes, there's a real patient impact in the systems you're building. What are the things that you and your team are thinking about? You know, maybe they're not technology related, but back to guardrails and other things like that. What are you thinking about before you think this is good enough for production when there's real patient impact to the software you are building?
I think the number one is transparency. So being very clear when we use AI and when we don't. Straight up in our actual clinical delivery to patients today, we don't use AI. We possibly will in the future, but today, we use it internally for processes. We use it within, in building code and different things. But in terms of decision making around patient care today, it's not part of what we deliver. But we work very closely with clinical teams. For example, there's a huge amount you can do in terms of patient education, for example, and creating imagery, creating, even the language, creating it in different languages. And it's not even just the language, it's in the cultural approach that works at the individual level. AI is fantastic for that and helps us very much there. And again, we're very transparent with clinical teams. We would often get clinical teams to review the output of the AI, what the models are generating and so on. I suppose one thing that has helped us a lot is we have ISO standards on our information security management system. So we have 27001, we have quality management system and so on. And we've back to the point earlier around processes. We've actually taken the same approach in how we approach AI. So, in terms of our cybersecurity, we're very careful and so on. But we're always very mindful that, as they always say to you, it's the human that can potentially make the mistake, that can click on that link in an email that brings your system down and so on. We try and take the same approach with AI, that actually we educate, we do a lot of training, we take an AI first sort of training and responsible AI approach in terms of our staff training as well.
Yeah, amazing. So leading in on that a little more, this is a great segue to Alan. You and Cloudsmith in general, you're seeing what flows through the supply chain, the software supply chain, I think, for lots and lots and lots of companies. There's a moment when an AI pilot becomes not a pilot, not a notebook, and starts actually flowing through real production pipelines, right? This is now operating code for the organization. From your vantage point, what changes at that moment that most companies don't anticipate? When they get to that level of maturity, what do they not see coming from a control plane perspective?
Ultimately, it is about that observability side of things and making sure that, that they don't put known vulnerabilities into the code, don't put that out. It's sort of interesting sort of hearing you talk. We actually don't have a lot of AI in our product. We do obviously use AI to build, and we only turned code reviews on actually last week because we were kind of worried about it. But we are piloting that. But what we do have is a policy layer within, which is the part that provides control. But policy is written as code. So actually, the AI portion is we can generate based on natural language those policies, but they're human verified. And so at the minute, we don't have any AI doing anything automated because it's so important to make sure that every artifact that goes through the system ultimately is secure, make sure that it is what was expected. So we don't want to introduce any risk there.
You don't want a rogue agent deleting your code base and the backups in 9 seconds.
I think there was a story last week where a rogue agent deleted the database, and that can essentially be a company-ending event if you're not backed up and you don't have some of those other guardrails. So no, it's very important to make sure that the code you're expecting gets through, but the code that you don't doesn't.
Powerful use cases, but requires guardrails, requires trust, requires an operating model that is taking into account these new artifacts that are moving through our systems. So Michael, from a builder's perspective, I think you've seen this from both sides, and you're still building code in the trenches for clients. What's the difference between what good engineering looks like today, and this is a little bit adjacent, but I think relates into the whole conversation. What does good engineering look like today from pilot to actually getting to production? So obviously, some of us have CEOs that are vibe coding applications overnight. What do good engineering teams look like that are actually, and how are they different from a composition perspective when they're building mature enterprise applications today?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think the same evaluations we've always had for development still stand a lot from the psychology of the developer and how they behave in a working environment. I think, as I was saying before, the speed of output has changed significantly, but a lot of the core practices aren't going anywhere because they were kind of correct the first time. And I think what we really look for from like a good engineering point is not being scared to use the technology necessarily, because unlike Alan's case where it's a very deterministic system that you rely on, we have, we need a lot of code written for new products that come out, and as long as we have experienced people there who understand a lot more of the business context of the application and also the existing security that you had to build into your software beforehand, we've noticed that we're able to bring people on a lot easier. Like the entry level to build software now is so low that, as you were saying, obviously CTOs are building apps now and stuff, which is awesome. I think good engineering is still willingness to learn for yourself, willingness to go out of your way and like learn about the community and the ecosystem, and don't be scared to go on something like Stack Overflow, even though very few people are using it now, because there's so much human experience that really teaches the psychology of a developer there. And I think those good engineering principles still stand. Absolutely, it's very much, you can build so many more things, and there is less of a question of is it going to work? It's more, should it work, and should you do that thing? And that's something that I don't think will go anywhere at all.
Yeah, so the basic principles are good engineering practices as they were 5 years ago still exist today. It's
Absolutely.
still requirements understanding. It's still planning, implementation, testing, observability. All those same foundational blocks still exist today. We're just augmented by amazing tooling.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of the workflow methodologies that people would previously use in teams have scaled quite well to teams of like 10 agents helping you out as well, because you have your core developers, but if they all have a couple of robots that can help them, suddenly a team that you would have needed 15 people working on to build something now becomes a team of a lot less, maybe 4 or 5. But the output that they have, as long as there's good leadership and engineering review there, it's groundbreaking. It's great.
Amazing. So they're going to start the Oscars music very soon here. So we'll put the panel out for lunch as well, and we'll just keep going. Just really rapid fire for this group. If you had to take one piece of advice based on your experience and what you guys have seen, shipping pilots, shipping code, operating model, technology, if you had one nugget of, take this home and apply it to your teams, what would that be?
I'd say if you have an engineering team, ask them, or ask yourself and then ask them, is AI adding any quality to what you're doing, or is it just making everything really fast?
Make sure that you have guardrails and do code reviews properly.
Emphasis on properly.
I'd agree with both of those. And then the third thing is probably bring the staff with you or bring the team with you, and training. And that's from, the person on the front desk right through to the guys who code and so on, the person who does the accounts and so on. The whole team needs to be on board with understanding, AI, understanding guardrails, understanding the process, and keep them updated. It's not a case of a one and done, because, as we heard earlier, and we all know it's changing so fast.
Every day.
Every day. So it's almost like it needs to be a team effort to really bring AI into the business and scale it to enterprise level.
Awesome. Stephen?
Irrespective of the advances that AI brings us, make sure that the human experience remains front and center.
Brilliant. Well, thank you guys all so much for the insights and the conversation. Thank you.